Hello everybody and welcome to Development Corner, your annual portion of technical geekery and insight and information and detail about all things technical in Formula One, where we go through all the cars, or nearly all the cars, and reveal some of the technical secrets that might make the difference between winning and losing. My resident engineer, mechanical engineer, strategist, we might not need your strategy in this one, Bernie Collins is with me. Bernie, thank you very much for joining us. Right, let's start, because there's plenty to talk about, with the McLaren, shall we? Because that's certainly set the pace so far here in Bahrain testing. We're on the last day here, so we still think on race pace they look the fastest. So working our way around, maybe from top to bottom, they've gone with a sort of more oval, a sort of egg-shaped airbox, which is quite interesting. Anything in that? Why might they have chosen to do that?
Yeah, so my thoughts on the airbox is that it directly affects the flow onto that rear wing. So you're directly affecting the downforce the rear wing's producing and the DRS effect. And in many years, there's been a big focus on what that rear wing can produce in DRS in particular. So that's one aspect to look at there.
So that's why they've squashed it down a bit?
I think so, to clean up a bit of the air that's going in the rear wing and allow it to produce more downforce.
Okay, but they still need it to be quite wide to get enough air to, because these three channels in here, I don't know if you can see that there, Lee, there are three channels in there. There's one central, one left and one right. They're feeding different bits.
They will go to different radiators. So you'll sometimes find they'll go to oil radiator or water radiator. Some could be specific for the air system, some could be specific for the engine. So you'll get different flow channels from that airbox to different parts of the rear of the car.
Okay, all right. That also tallies with what's going in the side pods as well. Let's talk about front wings. We see that McLaren have mounted their nose cone to the second element. There's a main plane front wing down there. Red Bull have just brought a new one. Red Bull have played around with this. Sometimes their nose came down to the bottom element of the front wing, sometimes it didn't. They brought a new one where it basically copies the McLaren today. You just want sort of that front wing working as cleanly as possible, don't you?
Exactly, you want the cleanest airflow. So what happens at the front of the car affects everything rearwards of the car. So very, very small changes on the front wing can have a very, very big effect on what goes to your floor. The very small gap, as we see there on that front wing in that head-on position between those first and second elements, but that will be crucial to how that front wing's developing downforce.
Okay, let's see if we can see any more of that front wing here. Maybe it's better on that shot, just to show what McLaren are doing with this front wing. Worth bearing in mind, of course, that from the Spanish Grand Prix in June, race 9, they are going to change the deflection loads on that front wing to make it 5 millimeters less, to allow, I should say, 5 millimeters less deflection. They did put a big load on that, and it was allowed 15 millimeters, so 1.5 centimeters. It's not that much, and now they're only allowed 1 centimeter. Not much of a difference if it deflects, or is it much of a difference?
I think, when we look at 5 mil or, fraction of a centimetre, we think of that as very, very small. But like we just said, everything at the front has such a massive knock-on effect at the rear of the car. And when they're turning the front wing, we see them do it in pit stops for different tyre compounds. They're moving that angle much, much less than that 5 millimeters. So I think that will have, particularly in the high speed where the wing's deflecting the most, quite a big knock-on downstream.
Okay, well, we'll see how that changes the competitive order from the Spanish Grand Prix. Round 9 it is now, the Spanish Grand Prix. By the way, I should say at this point, apologies for the ancient laptop. I borrowed it from the kids. It's normally what they do their homework on. I know it's old, but that's the way we like it. I like nice things, reliable things. I'm not massively into my technologies, notebook, paper notebook, old pen that's broken. So if you think you're taking the mickey out of me for me old MacBook Air, then I'm unashamedly connected to my old tech. Right, these gullies are really aggressive, and what McLaren have done is some detailed work on the floor. This section we'll get to in a moment. These floor edges, working the DRS as you're talking about, benefiting or rather maximizing their effective DRS when they're actually using it in battle, if you like. And part of that is this much more aggressively packaged rear end, and it's really slim, and these channels down here look really deeply cut.
Yeah, it all looks much cleaner. You can imagine, the airflow to the back, to the rear suspension. Every component is there by design, every member on that back of the car. So you can imagine the airflow to that rear wing, the lower main plane, is going to be much, much cleaner than it had been in the past.
Okay. Little winglets and flick-ups, maybe we can see it on the next picture. Oh no, this is the DRS one, yeah. So, you know, they're not allowed to do the mini DRS that they had, but that sort of hard edge, that sharp edge, I mean, all the teams have it, but within the agreement that McLaren have come to with the FIA, if you can get that in the airflow and maybe, you know, get it up a bit,
Yeah.
then is that a benefit?
Yeah, everything that you can lose of downforce in the main straight is of benefit. And again, very, very small differences. We've had it in the past where even in data, if the DRS wasn't closing correctly, you could see that in the data from an aerodynamicist point of view. So any, you know, marginal gains, you know, fractions of seconds are making the difference here.
Yeah, okay. We'll get onto some front suspension details in a minute, but worth noting that McLaren, like Red Bull and now like Ferrari, have the pull rod front suspension. So there it is. It's going from that point in the wheel hub down to where there's to be the suspension rockers and then a torsion bar and probably, an anti-roll bar in there, and just two lower. So McLaren have just got two lower wishbones there. So where does the steering arm? Where does the track rod for the steering arm
Well, that is
go?
the question, Ted. Are you going to bring us on to that?
No,
Or you
not
want me to
yet.
answer it now?
Not yet. Bear it in mind, everybody. So why would you want, if you've got an upper wishbone there, the top one there, and then the lower one
Which is quite far back
quite
and low
far
down.
back.
Yeah.
And why is that? Why are we seeing those wishbones kind of go like that?
So that's part of what we hear a lot of anti-dive suspension
Anti-dive.
geometry. So basically what you're trying to do is, if you imagine in your road car, when you brake quite heavily, the car goes forward. That's
Yep.
a very natural reaction
Yep.
to do. Or a bus or a taxi, whatever you're traveling in. You get that sort of braking sensation. There's methods in geometry in order to prevent the car being able to do that under braking force. With these cars, with the downforce platform, we're trying to keep the floor almost stationary to the road at all times.
Yeah.
The more that we can keep it the same gap from the road at all times, the better for downforce.
Okay.
So under braking, if we can stop that floor touching at the front,
Yep.
that is better for downforce. So if you put that anti-dive geometry in, you're trying to keep the floor an equal distance from the road surface.
Okay. Doesn't that give a really weird feeling for the driver?
Yeah, can you imagine being in your car and braking and not feeling that
Yeah.
forward?
It's like,
So
whoa.
the drivers in these cars, because the car doesn't do that jump forward, they're relying on the G-load, they're relying just on the forces on their body, but obviously they're very well strapped into the car as well, so it is odd. That is one of the disadvantages, is that odd sensation.
Okay, McLaren have been doing plenty of aero testing, of course, with the FlowViz paint. That's this green paint they put on various bits of the cars, let it go round for a bit, and then see where the lines that it goes. Do they only do this if they've got a sort of doubt over something or a bit of a problem? And if they come out and it's nice straight lines, is that all good? But if they see wiggly lines going everywhere, do they think, oh my goodness, we've got something wrong here?
Yeah, so basically if you see nice straight lines on a FlowViz, that means that the airflow is still what we call attached to the wing. If it starts to swirl and basically do whatever it wants, it looked like the FlowViz paint's just had a bit of mad.
Having a party.
Yeah, exactly. That means it's not the airflow is no longer attached to that, and that is very, very bad for downforce performance.
Okay. Swirls, very, very bad. Straight, very good. So there we go, there's on the McLaren. The usual messing around with the wing mirrors. You know, there are rules that allow you, obviously you need to have wing mirrors, but there's no rules that say that you can't do all sorts of weird things and wonderful things with them to condition the air to the back. These little rabbit's ears as well, either side of the halo. McLaren deciding not to have any cooling either side of the halo, unlike some teams that we'll get onto in a second. These ramps are interesting. So you see just south of the downstream, if you like, of the front wheels, and you've got to have something in there. There's the barge board in there as well, but there's a very nice photo, the next one, that shows you what the airflow does over these ramps. And there we are. Lee, you might need to zoom in on this a little bit, but when you've got the FlowViz, not only does it show the teams what's going on, but it shows the rest of us, and they put a bit there, and it goes whoop, there and then down. Amazing how you can make it do that.
Still attached. Nice lines.
Oh, it's still
nice
attached,
lines,
yes.
which is really what they're
so
looking
that's
for.
what they were doing there.
Yeah,
They
they're
were
trying to
checking-
see that how the airflow is going over that ramp, and you don't want the ramp too steep, because if it's too steep, it might detach at the end. So you want
Okay.
a nice, smooth ramp.
So Lee, you're nice and tight on this. So So that air is actually going, and they can make it do this, in there, down there, and then it's going in these channels out to the back.
Yeah.
And they can do that precisely.
They can do that pretty precisely, yeah. We spend a
Amazing.
lot of time in CFD, first checking it,
Yeah.
and then in the wind tunnel, so computation fluid dynamics.
Okay, but they've got to make sure that the air, presumably there's a little bit of bleed air coming out the floor, which is being governed by these little strakes,
Yes.
and that has to work nicely with the air coming through those channels.
So basically, when you use air, you take performance out of it, if we want to think of it like that. So when it becomes dirty air and it's got those little vortexes in it that we say, you want to scrub off the vortexes, get rid of them. They're no good for producing downforce further back. That's what these little edges on the floor, they're trying to get rid of the
Right.
dirty air, keep the clean stuff.
Yeah, okay. Let's go through. So that's what happens. You might need to get nice and close on this, Lee, again. So that's what happens there. You can see the nice clean lines, and it's just starting to bleed down
Yeah.
to the edge of the floor there. That's so interesting. I love that. Right. Lower Red Bull suspension, pull rod, top wishbone,
Yeah.
pull rod, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. What are each of those?
There are 3 of them.
Yes. So there's for normal suspension, you've got a front leg of a wishbone member, a rear leg of a wishbone member, top and bottom, so
Yep.
that's 4.
Yep.
Then you've got a pull rod or a push rod, depending on how a team wishes to go. And then you have a steering arm.
Steering
arm used to connect the steering wheel to generally the front of the wheel.
So, come on, should we do it now?
Yeah, let's
All
do
right.
it.
What Mercedes have done, they're very excited about this. I'm excited to tell you they've now done the same thing. So look, 3 on the Red Bull, only 2. 1, 2 on the Mercedes. So nice bit of innovation on the Mercedes. They've moved the power steering module back a bit, and now the steering arms, if you like, go. They would have been like
Yep.
that, going straight out to steer the cars back a bit. They would now go, no, like this. They would go in and out like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
Just for the aero benefit of only having 2 lower
Yeah, so if you have
arms rather
3
than
members in a line, you've got 3 chances to disturb the air. If you've got 2 members in a line,
Yep.
you've got only 2 chances. So your air should be cleaner as it comes through. It's actually, from a carbon point of view, if they've built the wishbones in carbon, which I suspect they have, very complex to do. I remember trying to do a tow link that had the track rod running through it, and it was a pretty complex piece of carbon fibre.
Okay, nice view of the front suspension when you have a push rod here. So that's the suspension arm there that comes up there. It's got a middle third damper, and then acts with a rocker which transfers the movement from that thing going up, transfers it to a twisting movement to these torsion bars,
Yeah.
which are placed either side. And then what is this little linked fella in the middle?
Yeah, so that's basically to control roll across the car.
Okay.
So that basically connects one side to the other in terms of those push rods, so that if you have one wheel going up, so in a bump situation, it's directly affecting the other wheel. So you're trying to control the roll of the chassis versus the wheels.
So that's roll.
Yeah.
The heave is up and down,
Yes,
and the torsion bars are as the wheel goes
individual
individual
wheels.
wheel. I do like suspension. You said you used
Suspension's
to do
brilliant,
suspension.
yeah. So I love suspension.
I love
it's great.
suspension. Okay, let's go back on the Mercedes. They have the ramp as there as well. Anything else on the Red Bull? Yeah, I mean, they've gone for, as opposed to a similar kind of airbox to last year, similar rear wing. They've tidied up the bodywork, so none of the cannons, these sort of big sort of cucumber channels that we used to have towards the back last year. But, you know, of a generation,
This is the
that's
old
the
nose,
old
you like to
nose.
say.
That's the old nose, so where the nose is actually connected to the main plane of the front wing. And they have gone with these cooling channels either side of the halo, just the little ones. They had it last year. I remember doing it on last year's development corner, and they've got it this year as well. Where would they be going, and are they actually of any use? They're quite small.
Yeah, there will be. There'll be things like a gearbox cooler, for example, is actually a very, very small cooler that sits in the back of the car. So, or we've often had things, we've had to cool the clutch in the past. So there'll be certain coolers that will easily take air from that.
Okay. All right, we've done 15 minutes, so let's take a break. After the break, we're going to tell you who this guy is, how brilliant this pink hoodie is, and what he's reading, and what Lewis Hamilton is going to be reading as well. More Development Corner in a bit. Hello again, welcome back to Development Corner, the programme where we're doing a proper geek fest where we're explaining all the technical developments in Formula One for 2025. Now, this is not a technical development, this is John Elkann. He's the president of Ferrari and Fiat, I believe, the sort of head of the family that owns the whole thing. It's a very nice, what do people say? Hashtag want.
Hashtag want.
I want this pink Ferrari hoodie.
It's beautiful.
That is really beautiful. And it's quite rare for the top man at Ferrari and Fiat to be paying a visit to testing, but that's exactly what he's done over the last couple of days. This is today what he's wearing. This was him. If you're next to somebody in a pink hoodie, you would think you'd be a bit more keen on it if you're Fred Vasseur.
Happy,
wouldn't you?
a bit happier.
So I'm not sure whether Fred wants the pink hoodie or not.
I want to see Fred in pink.
But John Elkann, something interesting Lewis Hamilton was saying yesterday. John Elkann is reading a book that he's recommended to Lewis, and Lewis is quite open about this. So this book is called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. So if you want to know Essentialism, if you want to know what book Lewis Hamilton and John Elkann from Ferrari are reading and what it's about, and you would like to read it as well, I have no connection to Greg McKeown, then it's this, the life-changing international bestseller. It's about, have you ever found yourself struggling with information overload? Have you ever felt both overloaded, overworked, and underutilized? Story of my life, Bernie.
Story of our life.
I don't know if we're getting the drivers through here. If you answered yes, do you ever feel busy but not productive? If you answered yes to any of these, the way out is to become an essentialist. Greg McKeown, CEO of a leadership and strategy agency in Silicon Valley, shows you how to achieve what he calls the disciple pursuit of less. And this is something Lewis Hamilton was talking about yesterday. He was saying that John Elkann has recommended this, and Lewis Hamilton feels that John Elkann can recommend lots of things. He wants to learn. Lewis saying he wants to learn from John Elkann because he obviously runs big companies.
Yeah, well, it's good. He's gone in with a very open mind, Lewis, hasn't he?
It's quite interesting, isn't it? Right, enough about books. Let's have a look at the Ferrari itself. So it started with these huge aero rakes, and the design of this one is quite interesting. Why would it be in this crazy design? Would you not just want plots, being in a line, which some teams have?
Yeah.
This seems to be...
Sort of looks like the work of a madman, doesn't it?
Well, it looks like the sort of Sagrada Familia or something.
I think it's because if you have that sort of matrix structure, everything's, 2 centimetres apart in a sort of mesh, then if the air is coming not directly straight head on, slight up or down element to it, you miss that airflow or you read that airflow slightly incorrectly. So the pitot tube on the front of the car reads air straight head on. Any sort of angle, inward, outboard, up or down, any wash on that air, you read much better on one of these where the pitot also targeted as they would expect it to read.
Okay, interesting. So Ferrari have now gone pull rod front suspension as well. There you go, you can see it at that angle. So they were push rod for the last... I remember before Sebastian Vettel came, or just around it, they were pull rod back then.
Yeah.
And then they went push rod, and I don't really know why, but Loic Serra, who's the aero guy who's come to Ferrari from...
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ted, but Williams have taken on more of the Mercedes gearbox and rear end this year, is that right?
Yes, they were a year behind and now they've caught up.
Yeah, so maybe some of that is from sort of last minute packaging of that, but they should have at least had the information on that quite early on, but it does look like you'd expect lots of room under there, but hopefully not.
Okay. It is quite a quick car, though, certainly, and they've got 2 quick drivers in Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz, so hopefully it's going to be not a bad, I think everybody's going in for the press conference, it's not a bad car there on the Williams. So compare the rear wing twist on the rear wing end plates there. It's pretty much similar, actually. McLaren's slightly different orientation, but if you have keep your eye on that rear wing end plate, it's nicely twisted. And I can see, even from here, my untrained aerodynamicist eye, I can see what McLaren are trying to do there. If you angle those bits in a bit, then it's trying to outwash the air to the back.
Exactly, and you're trying to get some clean air just this side of the tyre onto the edge of that wing, so you don't want it to be directly in line with your rear tyre.
Yeah, okay. Aston Martin, let's just touch on a couple of other things. So Aston Martin, it's a sort of blank canvas, really. They're waiting for Adrian Newey to show up.
Yep.
He starts probably when we get back from this weekend, 3rd of March. And if you can make it a drivable car, but not invest too much, I mean, they've got the amusing little flick-ups here, not invest too much in messing around with something or developing something that somebody's going to come along and say, no, I don't like that, let's do it my way.
Yeah.
Is that a sensible approach?
Well, I think their drivers seemed pretty unhappy at times last year, so they needed a reset. They needed to go back a bit to basics. Seems to like what they've done here, and yes, have that canvas, build on it. Nothing too complex, like we say, at the back that you can't start at the front wing. So they will start to build on this, I think.
Okay, driver cooling slot, or is that cooling something else?
Yeah, most likely a driver cooling slot in that position. It tends not to be. Sometimes there'll be some electronics in the cockpit of the car, in around the driver's legs, but nothing that would require, I think, that size of cooling slot.
Okay, let's check. I've got the brightness fully up because you can just about see a hole where the halo arms meet the chassis side, and that's another bit that Aston Martin have stolen some cooling in. Quite an efficient area, actually. Take away any blockage when the air gets to that. You can take it away. Less disruption.
Yeah,
Give the air somewhere to go.
It stops that air in the buff body of the halo, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The halo's a very non-aero shape, if you like.
And cools something somewhere as well.
Yeah.
Williams have gone for a bit of a copy of the Red Bull overbite with the profile of their side pod inlet there. Quite a few things of the Red Bull have been copied by this year's Williams, actually. Nothing wrong with that. No shame in that. If you see something that's good, put it in a wind tunnel and print it. And there's the top shot of the Williams, which may well be leading the midfield here. Actually, not so bad. Some nice detail around the floor area there. And we'll finish on the Sauber, which unfortunately seems to be still at the back. Again, a bit of a blank canvas. I think they're definitely concentrating on 2026 when Audi come in full time.
Yeah, agreed. Totally agreed.
Okay, all right, good. That is it. We've run out of time, 25 minutes. Gosh, I learned a lot from that, and I hope you did too. Bernie, thank you so much. That is Development Corner, and we're really looking forward to seeing, well, the Sauber and all the other teams compete at the Australian Grand Prix, where we will see you soon. But first, we have a preview show, so join us on March the 7th for that. But for now, from both of us here, it's goodbye.
Thank you.
Sky Sports F1.